because you're a racist. Doing well in work and in your business and in your home life is just because you're a racist. What they wish to do is take all the power from the people, give it to the government, wipe everybody clean down to nothing, and then give you back whatever little privileges the government thinks you deserve, subject to the government taking them away. And that is absolutely backwards of what this country is founded on. That's why this is the most important election of your entire life. We stood face to face and we saw the future that we all face if we don't win this election. So it's hot out here and you've all been standing out in the sun. I'm going to keep it as brief as possible, but I think it's kind of important, okay? And I have to lay the foundation of what St. Louis is like. Y'all living out here in the civilized world, you don't realize that St. Louis is like the most dangerous place in the world. Rudy Giuliani and Bernie Kerik came down to interview us a few weeks ago, and we were talking about comparing New York, which is having a very violent and dangerous year, to St. Louis. Well, New York's got 8,400,000 citizens, and as of then, they had 280 murders. St. Louis has a population of 300,000, and we've got 207 murders as of yesterday. That's more than 20 times the murder rate of New York in a bad year. And that's just the background level of violence in St. Louis. And why is that violence there? St. Louis has been ruled by Democrats. I'm 64 years old next month. It's been ruled by Democrats for 15 years longer than I've been alive. They don't believe in law and order. They like rule by the mob. And the reason's very clear. Out of chaos comes tyranny, right? Their power is based on keeping the people afraid to come out of their houses, keeping the people afraid to stand up and take a stand. But then the George Floyd thing happens, and all of a sudden, those voices of unity, those people that want to pull us all together, those people that want to fight for social justice, decided the best way to show all those good spirits and good feelings is to burn down the city of St. Louis, okay? And so on the night of June the 1st, June the 2nd of this year, downtown St. Louis was set on fire. They burned buildings, they burned cars, they broke windows, they looted. 4 police officers in the city of St. Louis were shot that night. 1, retired police captain David Dorn, was murdered in his secondary employment at a pawn shop about a half a mile from my house. You want to know how bold and how unafraid of the police and retribution criminals are in St. Louis? The looters, the murderers that killed Captain Dorn live streamed his murder, okay? That's what we face in a city run by Democrats and run by George Soros-funded prosecutors in the city of St. Louis. We watched the 7-Eleven in downtown St. Louis, 2 blocks from police headquarters, from the time the first brick went through the windows and then the looters smashed in, stole everything, tore it up, threw fire into the building. The building becomes engulfed in flames, roof falls in. Patty and I are watching all this from a live helicopter feed from our bedroom. 20, 30, 40 minutes. You know how many police showed up? 0. You know how many firemen showed up? 0. They'd all been ordered to stand down by our lovely Democrat city government, all right? We look at each other and we say, holy, you know what? When the fit hits the shan, you're all out there and you're wild lonesome. So then, any of y'all that have been to St. Louis know that St. Louis has these things called private places. Back when St. Louis was a Wild West, people would get away from the filth and noise of the city and stake out some area in the countryside and put a wall around it and call it a private place. They built the streets and the sidewalks and own all of it. Inside a private place in St. Louis, everything is just as much private property as your own living room. And where we live on Portland Place, it's one of those areas. The 88 acres that makes up our private place used to be the Cabiny Dairy Farm in 1888, before some people bought it and turned it into our neighborhood. Well, then the city grew past, right? So now we're surrounded by the city of St. Louis. But a couple of blocks from our house, it's kind of nice, a little area where we used to have shops and restaurants and bars. We started noticing that all those places were getting boarded up. In our office, we have an 1888 building where we practice law, and around the corner is a little pharmacy, and one day I go over there and it's all boarded up. Well, I knew the owner, so I asked him what happened. And he said, well, the alarm went off. I said, did you go and see what was going on? He said, no, I didn't want to get killed. I said, well, tell me what happened. He said, well, they broke through the glass, They pried up the roll-down steel doors. They came in and they looted everything, broke everything they couldn't steal, and smashed everything they couldn't steal. And I said, how long were they in there? He said, 6 hours. I said, did the police ever show up? He said, yes, after 10 hours, okay? Once again, one of the things we talk about in all these speeches is that no matter how good the police department is, and by the way, the St. Louis Police Department, despite being handcuffed by the government, they're all real stand-up guys and they're 100% on our side, but they've got their boat loaded. They're understaffed, underfunded, and handcuffed by the prosecutor's office. And so I don't blame them in one bit, but a cop can't be standing next to you every minute. And when, as I say, the fit hits the shan, you've got to have your own gun. You got to have the willingness to stand up and face them. So another example of how bold the leftists are in St. Louis, there's an organization, an Antifa kind of organization called Expect Us, which is headed by a young lady named Cori Bush. And they're so unafraid of retribution, they publish when they're going to have a riot, okay? They put out on their website, on their Facebook page under events, we're gonna do this mob action, and they say when they're gonna do it and where they're gonna do it. They put out a flyer saying they're gonna do a mob action in our neighborhood on the Friday before June 28th when our event happened. Now these people are not shy about saying that they're Marxist. They're not shy about saying they want violent revolution. And they publicly say on television and in their literature that they don't like the terms peaceful protest. They don't want to be peaceful. They want to be violent. They want to be in your face, and they say it's necessary for them to break the law in order to be heard, okay? And they say they're coming to our neighborhood. Well, in light of that, and in light of how St. Louis had burned, we went out and got fire extinguishers and put them all around the first floor of our house because we don't particularly like the idea of getting burned. And then we know they like to shoot people, and so we stage weapons all around the first floor of our house because we'd like to fight back if we had to, okay? But then Friday comes and goes and it doesn't happen, okay? So we've got a little country place about 50 miles outside of St. Louis. So we went out to the farm and worked over the weekend. And then Sunday afternoon, our daughter's gonna come in from out of town. Her birthday was yesterday, just turned 31. But we're gonna have barbecue out in the patio on the east side of our house. And we start hearing the crowd form. And we start hearing the drum beats and the chants and the screaming. And we also hear what we don't hear. We live on the edge of something called Kings Highway, which is a 6-lane wide major thoroughfare north and south through St. Louis, and it's always tremendously busy. We're just north of the Barnes Jewish Hospital Complex, second largest hospital complex in North America. Always ambulances screaming by. There's no car traffic, and we look at each other and says, holy, you know what? The police have closed down Kings Highway to let the mob use it, okay? And then we start hearing the crowd build and build and build. And we are separated from Kings Highway by iron gates and an iron fence that have been there since 1888, all right? And all of a sudden we start seeing the headline of the mob come by, and 2 or 3 people, then 4 or 5 people. Then within seconds, all of Kings Highway, I'm talking 100 feet from side to side, is filled with screaming, shouting, chanting, flailing people as far down south as we can see. We have one security guard in our neighborhood, and he made himself completely invisible. He hightailed it out of there, okay? Once again, I look over at Patty, and we say, God, I hope they don't try to come in here. I hope they just pass by. At that instant, the gate bursts open. Now, these gates are a pair of batwing doors. One side, although it's locked and it's got a deadlock, if you pull on it hard enough, you can pull it past the tab. The other side is bolted to the ground with a 1/2-inch thick rod that goes into the pavement and has a padlock on it. It cannot open. Well, they broke the one side open and then folded down the other gate to the ground. Been there since 1888. They broke it down. They started storming in. Well, I went out the wing of the porch and I said the 2 most offensive, racist, white supremacist words known to every Marxist on earth. I said private property. When I said those 2 evil words, they were inflamed and they started pouring in ever so much so. Patty and our daughter went in the house to call 911. I went in the house and I got my AR-15. And I go back out in the wing of the porch, and the microphone here. I'm standing out there on the porch in the clothes that I'd been working in, rumpled clothes, rumpled pants, no shoes on, looking a little upset, right? And probably saying something impolite like, "Get the hell out of my neighborhood, this is all private property." And that just, you would think that the average person with normal intelligence, when they see kind of an unhappy looking 64-year-old man with a semi-automatic rifle in his hands, you might back up. You might do what I asked, which is get the hell out. No, they keep storming in. I don't know quite what to do at this point. I didn't want to have to hurt anybody. But now all of a sudden I've got a bigger problem, because I thought Patty was still in the house calling 911. All of a sudden, she shows up in the grass in front of me, waving that dumbass little Brico pistol over her head. Which she knows does not work, because we had disabled it to use it as a prop gun in a lawsuit that we had penned up in Pennsylvania. So you gotta imagine this young lady here out there. I've got a wall and a hedge, and I'm up 6 feet off the ground. I'm, maybe 50 feet away from the mob. She's as close to him as I am to this first gentleman here, with them all around her. But now I've got a problem, because I don't have a clean line of fire, right? If something happens to her and I have to shoot into the crowd, I might hit her. I kind of like her, and I didn't want to accidentally put a bullet in her. So now I've got to go down into the crowd. And so I go down there, and these people are screaming and shouting and death threats, and we're going to burn your house. You got a business, your business is gone. We're going to kill you, we're going to rape you, making every kind of rude and unrepeatable comment about Patty's female anatomy and where they're going to put that pistol when they take it away from her. And this is going to be my bedroom. That's going to be where I take my shower. That's going to be where I have my breakfast after we kill you and we take the house, right? So you've probably seen one of the stills where I'm standing next to Patty, and they've got these two tough guys, or people I guess think they're tough, they are front and center to intimidate us. One of them's wearing camo-colored body armor and face covered and head covered. He reaches into the pouches of his body armor and pulls out 2 loaded magazines, and he's close enough I can see it. He points them at me so I can see they're loaded with live shells, clicks them together, points at me and says, "You're next," okay? The guy standing next to him is wearing light-colored body armor, like Desert Shield type body armor, and he's carrying a sidearm, and they keep inching closer and closer and closer. You'll see that at some point I'm leaning over like this with talking to Patty, and what I'm saying is, if that guy comes any closer, I'm gonna have to kill him, okay? And I slid the selector switch on my AR to the fire position, and then Patty leans over at me and says, "You're not killing anybody this afternoon." The voice of reason, okay? And it worked the way it was designed to work. The Second Amendment, even though the gun she had was no more useful than 16 ounces of forged aluminum, right? She had a brick, it would have been more effective. She's out there in front of this crowd, and they didn't do anything. The house didn't get burned. We didn't get killed. Not even anything got spray painted, okay? That's the events y'all have seen on television. That was the easiest of the events, okay? What happened next was what transformed our lives and why you're seeing me here today. We had a client of ours, young African-American lady, who we thought was one of our best friends. We thought of these people as family. We'd been to her graduations and her sister graduations from college. Her husband was a former soldier who became a St. Louis City police officer and then committed suicide, and we went to his funeral. We'd go to their family functions where we'd be the only Caucasians at the family function. Well, it turns out she's in this Antifa organization, and she calls up that Tuesday morning and says, "What you guys done is inexcusable, and you're gonna have to die for it. We're gonna come back this Friday, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna burn your house, and there's nothing you can do about it," okay? And she was on the phone for an hour and a half with Patty. Finally, she says something like, "Well, maybe if Patty, you and I and some of my girlfriends stand out front of your house and pass out bottled water, maybe that'll save you." "Nah, you're gonna die, the house is gonna burn, and there's nothing you can do about it." So we start trying to hire private security. none of the secondary employment local cops that we usually use wanted to do it because they didn't want the bad press if somebody had to get hurt. They referred us to this entity that did corporate security around the world, you know, high-end stuff with special forces type guys. They had gotten some bad press during the Ferguson riots. They told us they didn't want to do it because they couldn't afford any more bad press. They suggested that we hire secondary employment cops. So we've been there, done that, ain't gonna happen. Finally, that guy says to us, this guy who provides corporate security around the world, the only thing I can suggest to you is that you take whatever you can't live without, put it in your car, drive away, and just abandon your house. And I said, no effing way in heck. We're not doing that. We're not going to abandon our house. We'll go down to the ship if we have to. Well, earlier in that week, I'd gotten a call from a gentleman at the White House that said the president wanted to express his support for you, and if there's ever anything we can do for you, let us know. Well, I called him back right then, and I told him the story I just told you, and I said, well, now would be a pretty gosh darn good time to do that. So he gave me Mark Meadows' cell phone number, okay? And I called up Mark Meadows, and I told him the story I just told you. The next call I made was to Tucker Carlson. We're sitting on the bench in our kitchen, and Patty's sitting next to me sobbing because we know we're gonna die and there's nothing we can do about it. And I got Tucker on the phone, and I'd done his show maybe once or twice by then. We'd actually gotten to know each other kind of good. And he puts it on the air. He says, I'm talking to Mark McCloskey. I can hear Patty in the background sobbing, and he tells the world the story I just told you, okay? And by the time that Friday evening happened, when our daughter had come up to us and was gonna go back home to where she lives, and I can't tell you where because she'll get canceled in a second, but she anticipated that we were going to die. She gave us each a hug and said goodbye, never expecting to see us again. But that Friday night, thanks to the White House, thanks to Tucker Carlson, a little help from Colonel Allen West down in Texas, we had FBI light aircraft circling the house. We had 6 Navy SEALs. We had 10 secondary employment cops from rural jurisdictions who didn't mind getting a little dirty if the job required it. We had what used to be called in the Reagan administration, peace through superior firepower. And even though they'd been told not to, the chief of the St. Louis Police Department and his lieutenant in charge of riot patrol, Chief John Hayden, he came out in front of our house himself, conferred with my private army, and worked up a plan of attack. We had reinforced the gates and put up cyclone fencing, put up high-intensity lights, and we had some guys that looked pretty stinking impressive out there protecting our heinies. Once again, you know, 500 to 1,000 people now, according to the FBI, came that night to kill us and burn the house. And the reason why I'm here is that standing in front of our house with a megaphone, chanting into it, was that young lady, Cori Bush. And what is she chanting? She's chanting, you can't stop the revolution. You can't stop the revolution, all right? Well, I gotta tell you, Jim, the SEAL standing behind me with his M16 said, oh yes, I can. But that Marxist radical, that young lady who is openly calling for violent revolution and the overthrow of our government and our way of life, she ran for the 1st congressional district in the state of Missouri, my congressional district. This lady who ran an organization and still does, which vowed to kill us and burn us down, is now going to be my United States Congresswoman from the 1st District of Missouri, okay? 300 to 500 people broke down my gate, trespassed in our private neighborhood, threatened our lives, threatened the life of my wife, my daughter, our dog, threatened to burn down our house. Not a single one of those people is facing any charge for anything, okay? We have been charged with 2 felonies that can land us 4 years in prison, cost us our licenses, cost us our Second Amendment rights, cost us all our constitutional rights. And for doing what? Not a shot was fired, Nobody got hurt. What we're being persecuted for is having the gall to stand up, exercise our Second Amendment rights, and protect ourselves against the mob. This is the future for all of us if we don't win this election. These folks are very bold now. They're openly running for Congress as communists, as Marxists, as people that support the violent overthrow of our government, as people that don't believe in private property, don't believe in individual liberty, don't believe that the power lives in the hearts of the people, but believes that the government should have all the power. These people don't respect your rights. In fact, they say that everything that you have is a result of your racism, that the country is intrinsically evil and racist and mean-spirited. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the last couple of months, we've been touring the country. We've been meeting thousands and thousands of people. And I can tell you one thing we know for sure. This isn't that country. This country is full of proud, honest, hardworking people that love their country. This is not a racist nation. This is not a hateful nation. Donald Trump isn't a racist. He's not a hateful person. He, in fact, I've had exactly one telephone call with the president. He called us up out of the blue on the Thursday when he was going to be accepting the nomination later that day. Calls me up on my cell phone, and the cell phone rings, a voice comes on and says, hold for the President of the United States. He gets on, he says, hi Mark. I said, well, hi Mr. President, do you mind if I put you on speakerphone so everybody else can hear? He says, no, go right ahead. He talked to us that afternoon before he was given his acceptance speech, 20 or 30 minutes, talked to us about our lives, old house restoration, because he's doing that too, all kinds of stuff, a little bit of politics, but it was like he'd known us his entire lives. It was like having a conversation with your best friend. That's the real Donald J. Trump. He's not the person that the fake news media wants you to believe in. He's a guy that does honestly and genuinely believe what the Declaration of Independence says, and that is that our rights are given to us by God and not by the government. Somebody asked me out in front of the courthouse a couple of days ago when we went in there, when we were told that they did not yet have any grand jury indictments of us yet. They asked me about what I thought about what they did to Patty's gun. And as you know, Patty's gun did not work when she was out there waving that dumbass little Bryco pistol at the angry mob. He called it a peaceful protest the other day. I said we prefer the phrase angry mob. He might have left off the word peaceful, I'm not sure.
I didn't use the word peaceful. I did not use that word. I wouldn't do that to you, Mark. Are you kidding me?
But what did the prosecutor do? What did this George Soros prosecutor do? She ordered the gun taken to the crime lab, taken apart, made to work, put back together, test fired, and then, because one of the necessary elements of the crime that we've been charged with is having a weapon readily capable of lethal use, and hers wasn't, so they had to make it so, okay? So this reporter asks me, what do you think about that? And I said, if that doesn't scare the bejeebers out of you, then it ought to. Because if they go to that length to fake a claim against two nobody lawyers from the Midwest, think what they'll do to fake a presidential election, okay? That's why when it comes to be November 3rd, and we've got all this mail-in ballot malarkey, we have to get out there and as many human beings as possible have such an overwhelming in-person vote that they can't come back the next day and say, let's see how many Biden ballots we have to create in order to set this aside. Right? You got to get out there. We got to all vote. We got to vote for all Republicans. You got to talk to everybody you know. Get everybody you know that's already a Republican, get them out there and make sure they vote. And each of you make a task of finding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Democrats that you know and tell them the truth. Talk about how Donald Trump gave us the best economy the world's ever known. Tell all your friends about how he had the lowest unemployment figures for every demographic in the country. Hispanics, women, African Americans, everybody, all right? during a period of time when he was getting nothing but pooped on by every media outlet except Fox and Newsmax. Every day, a new crisis, a new fake conspiracy against him. And yet in 3.5 years, he was able to do more in 47 months than Joe Biden and his hiding in the basement personalities done in 47 years in government. We've got to vote for Donald Trump and for every Republican because he's got the backs of the blue. He supports law enforcement. He supports law and order. Joe Biden wouldn't even say the phrase law and order. He got the word law and they're like stuck in his throat, okay? At the convention, no Democrat even mentioned the riots in the streets. No Democrat mentioned the disorder and the violence and the murder and the mayhem and the billions of dollars of damage. It's because, once again, they like that. They believe it gives them power. They believe that if they keep the people frightened, the people won't resist. But by God, we need to resist. We need to stand up, recognize this for what it is. This is a battle for our very future. This is a battle for the United States as we've known it in our lifetime. If we lose this election, people talk about the Democrats packing the Supreme Court, and I'm not sure you know what that means. Joe Biden refuses to deny that he's going to do it. Kamala Harris has vowed to do it, okay? Their platform vows to do it. What packing the Supreme Court means is adding additional members of the court who are political hacks, who then will dominate the court, do away with the Second Amendment, do away with the Electoral College. Do you imagine what it would be like without an Electoral College where New York and California rule us? Where we become voiceless, where all of us in what the Democrats like to call flyover country will never again have a voice. If they get elected and they pack the Supreme Court, there's no coming back. The president can veto Congress. Congress can override the veto of the president, but there's no appeal from the Supreme Court. If they pack the Supreme Court, there'll be no coming back, okay? That's why we need this election to vote in Donald Trump, to vote in every Republican, to keep the Harris-Biden ticket in the basement. We need a president that backs the blue, a president that backs the armed forces, who has rebuilt the armed forces of the United States to a level that it's never seen before, a president who will never let another veteran die standing in line waiting for health care, a president that's not shy about letting us say Merry Christmas, a president that recognizes that we kneel when we pray and we stand for the American flag. Amen. Thank you all very much.